Welcome, this is Timothy Halloran with a response video. My friend Sat Yam, who I had the pleasure of meeting about a month ago at an Amma Darshan, put out a really excellent question video to evolutionary astrologers. So I wanted to answer these questions as well as promote my new Q&A. Through this YouTube channel, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, whether it be about astrology, spirituality, your birth chart, much the same way as Satyam will be sharing in this video. So I certainly invite you to our Q&A. You're also welcome to join my own astrology school. And I will also put a word out. If you're interested in evolutionary astrology, we'll have a forthcoming EA conference at the start of October where myself and some other fantastic evolutionary astrologers will be presenting. So check out that information if you're interested in the video description below. All right, let's go ahead and hear from Satyam.
Hi, this video is for the evolutionary astrologers out there. Got some questions on my mind, hoping you can help me out. I'm still relatively new to astrology and I'm probably going to be revealing my ignorance here. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not the first person to have these questions, but I've been thinking.
Okay, so first of all, I want to just thank you so much for your respectful introduction. He admits, I'm new to astrology, so I'm probably going to be voicing some ignorance here, but he wants to learn. So he put this video specifically out to evolutionary astrologers. Now I have to stop here and highlight how much I appreciate this respect, because a lot of us, when we have ideas about the body, nutrition, we probably don't go and consult a PhD doctor and say, I've had these ideas about bones and muscles and the circulatory system. I think it's completely different than what all of you doctors have been studying for centuries and centuries. And this is all too common in the field of astrology. And it's a huge problem. It's a toxic disease that's preventing noble, useful, supportive astrology from meeting the masses. In my years of teaching astrology, I once had a student ask me bluntly, do I even need to learn astrology considering nobody out there knows what astrology is? People coming to me for astrology readings aren't going to know that I'm uneducated. Why should I gain an education? Why we should gain an education is to understand the field itself. So again, I appreciate your respect, brother, because even though you will be displaying some ignorance, this is what it means to come into learning any type of field. So I thank you for your courage to speak out, to ask these questions, because you are 100% correct. There are many, many other people having these same questions. But my first point here is that there are too many people not willing to ask questions. There are too many people also assuming that they know astrology, having no education. There's no standard for astrologers. Again, my own students are asking me, why do I need to get an education? Because there is no standard for an astrological education. So this video is going to be charged with why we ought to get an education in astrology if we're really interested in learning astrology.
About how there seems to be a consensus among astrologers that says we're moving out of the Age of Pisces and into the Age of Aquarius. This is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius.
Now that's a good point in and of itself, that there is a consensus amongst astrologers, because again, it is one of the most narcissistic things possible to approach the entire field of astrology and say, listen, y'all have gotten it wrong. Listen, y'all from every culture going back to the dawn of time, y'all have gotten it wrong. So astrology has evolved out of the sages, the rishis, the wisest souls from all cultures around the globe reaching a consensus, which in and of itself is an amazing phenomenon and should really be proving how true and real astrology is. That said, there's plenty of non-consensus when it comes to different astrological branches, techniques. So where we do have a consensus, that's something I want to highlight. We are all using 12 zodiac signs, 12 houses, and we do generally agree that we are now leaving the Pisces age and entering the age of Aquarius. Now, to get very, very technical here, because this is actually a very technical question, what determines astrological ages is precession of the equinoxes. Every now and then you hear the NASA article, the science article that's simply there to slander astrology, that's saying, hey, the stars have changed, the constellations have moved, you're not the same sun sign that you thought you were. That's completely misguided. Not only do astrologers track precession, it's a time tracking technique that we use to determine the ages. Okay, so this time tracking technique is generally showing us shifting out of the constellation of Pisces into the constellation of Aquarius. Now, I'm going to get very technical here because at the same time as there's a general consensus that we're leaving Pisces and entering Aquarius, there is no consensus as to when exactly that will take place. In Jeffrey Wolf Green Evolutionary Astrology, which is what I represent and will certainly be promoting, like if you want to understand the zodiac to its greatest depth, please study Jeffrey Green's work. He's the founder. And just so you know, Satyam, Jeffrey Green's Evolutionary Astrology is actually a synthesis of Eastern philosophy. It was born straight out of Sri Yukteswar's pioneering, way, way ahead of his time. Sri Yukteswar was experimenting with combining the tropical and the sidereal zodiac, almost over a century ago, and this was extraordinarily pioneering. The first Pluto book written by Jeffrey Wolf Green is said to have come to him in a single dream that he received in Sanskrit directly from Sri Yukteswar. So a lot of what I'm going to be sharing to answer these Satyam's questions are actually going to go into a fairly complex understanding of more than just one cycle that's coming together. Because as I'll be sharing, the astrological age in which we are entering, which is generally accepted to be Aquarius, is not the only determining factor we use to understand why is our world, why is our circumstance, etc., etc. But there is no consensus when exactly we enter Aquarius. In fact, in Jeffrey Wolf Green astrology, we say that we're at the end of the age of Pisces, not quite yet entering into the age of Aquarius. And there are a whole number of symptoms. I will share a few of them in this video because this could go on for hours talking about what it means to be at the tail end of the age of Pisces, at the entrance of the age of Aquarius. I do have a video on my channel about entering the age of Aquarius. I'll put that in the video description as well that goes into further detail.
Is what we've been told. And in some ways I can see how that makes sense, because Aquarius is said to be associated with advancements in science and technology, and we're definitely seeing that. And if we look back at the past 2,000 years or so, Pisces kind of matches, because Pisces has to do with spirituality and mysticism, and I know that the two fish used as the symbol of Pisces is said to be associated with Jesus.
To say that Pisces is associated with spirituality and mysticism is a huge overgeneralization, as if Pisces were a spiritual good having everything to do with compassion and love. That's one of the most common misconceptions for neophytes in astrology, is we get really biased definitions of particular zodiac signs, and I'll be addressing that in this video. Absolutely, the technological advancements, I think, is one of the biggest indicators that we are moving into an Aquarian age. But let me pause and first address, what does an astrological age even indicate? Because it's not everything. Astrological ages are roughly 2,000, 2,500, roughly. Again, there's no defined date because we as a species make collective choices in regards to our own collective evolution. So this becomes more complex when we consider the amount of intricacy that goes into our collective situation. But the astrological age actually determines so much how the collective is spiritually evolving. So entering the Aquarian age is actually indicative of entering an age of science becoming the religion. becoming our spiritual orientation. When we talk about the age of Pisces, which we are wrapping up, we're not totally complete with. Pisces has so much to do with faith, surrender, sacrifice, letting go, bleeding out. Pisces is not all good, fluffy, sparkly. So if we want to say, why doesn't it look like Pisces the last 2,000 years? Well, we're going to put together a few different things to make sense as to why the world has been the way that it is. But astrological ages has to do with belief system. So as we're entering the age of Aquarius, this is going to be an age of science, being the actual foundation of our spiritual belief. And I would suggest, this is my kind of controversial, but I'm an astrologer, so this is what I would say is the word of God. Astrology is just the language of God. It is God direct. It's how to tune into what is and why. We understand why we have the experiences on Earth that we do for evolutionary purpose through the lens of evolutionary astrology. So we're learning about Pisces, and now we're going to be learning about Aquarius. Aquarius is also associated with atheism. So we're going to see an increasing number of atheists growing. And what I would like to provide, I know it's a kind of complex, maybe confusing, controversial opinion, is that that can be a highly spiritual vantage point. The vantage point of detachment, the scientific perspective of let's see life like Aquarius, a chemical reaction, so we can understand what life is from the most objective perspective. So in my own personal opinion, I would say the moment we really started to enter the age of Aquarius is when we sent astronauts to the moon, because Aquarius has to do with the penetration of dimensional barriers to break through to a higher vantage point and then send back this objective, informational, scientific perspective. So when we started to get photographs, Aquarius, viewing the eyes, Aquarius, the globe, the whole species as a singular point, from the vantage point of the moon, now we're starting to enter the Aquarian age. Scientific discoveries are going to continue to revolutionize our spiritual understandings in the centuries to come as we enter the age of Aquarius. What we see on the cusps of ages, therefore, are periods of tremendous tension. Why? Because the collective belief system is changing. You can look at every age shift and see this markedly. The age of Taurus was the age of Egypt and Babylon. They were all about preservation, Taurus, of things to take after death. A huge spiritual orientation towards Taurus material. We know the story of the golden calf that comes from the Taurian age. Then we enter the age of Aries, which is like Alexander the Great and the Roman Empire. It's, the Celtic philosophy of Valhalla and battling, and this respect and reverence of the warrior is largely what comes out of the Aries age. And it's not just Jesus and Christianity, which of course monocropped Pisces, the entire collective, through largely an age of what? Sacrifice and surrender, because Jesus said, those of you who want to follow me, pick up your cross and follow. And what we have seen is an age of so much extermination of entire cultures, of entire civilizations, religious belief systems, like the entire Mayan civilization wiped out by conquistadors in the Inquisition, for example. The Cathars, the Knight Templars were all burnt at the stake. These were the souls holding wisdom, picking up their cross and following Christ, who in very Pisces-like fashion was sacrificed. Pisces is the actual function of sacrifice, giving of ourself back to the whole. And the last 2,000 years of Pisces age is not therefore nailing that on the head. It's an evolutionary exploration of how do we do that. Therefore, as a reflection of being near the end of the age of Pisces, in all of our collective religions and belief systems, there tends to be huge confusion around sacrifice. How much are we supposed to give? How much are we supposed to walk on water like Jesus Christ versus how much do we need to be pragmatic about our bodies, our own selfish needs, etc.? That is the struggle of many souls in spiritual evolution, which will not be all souls. It will only be about 20% of the population throughout the age of Pisces. Those in spiritual evolution were largely going through an evolutionary experience of being sacrificed, of being the lamb. That's again only for a select amount of souls, but those really in spiritual evolution, that's been a lot of what the last 2,000 years has been containing as an experience.
Now, I'm sure there's probably more to it than that, and I'd love to hear it. But that's my understanding, and in that regard, I can see how the shoe fits. However, when I look at what each sign of the zodiac is said to represent, and then compare that in a very broad and general, simplified way to the past 2,000 years and the changes that I see happening in the world, something doesn't make sense to me, and I would really like your help with this. Because what it seems like we're actually doing is moving out of the age of Capricorn and into the age of Scorpio somehow. And I know those two signs are not next to each other, so how can we move from one to the other? Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you people. Maybe there's much more to it than that. And
there certainly is. And that's why actual astrologers are going to be very few and far between. I don't say that to be egotistical or mean. It's just a reflection of reality. There's going to be way more people interested or touting or even pretending to be an astrologer than those who are actually going to deep dive into it. Evolutionary astrology is like a life curriculum. If you get Jeffrey Green's Pluto 1 and Pluto 2 books, those are books you can reread throughout your entire life. They're so dense. There's so much to learn. So Satyam just made a really fascinating correlation, which is, hey, it seems the day and age reflects a lot of this Capricorn reality, which is true. Now, this is where we get into another technique that's specifically used by evolutionary astrologers. This technique was first developed by Dane Rudyard, who can be said to be the grandfather of evolutionary astrology. Jeff Wolf Green took Dane Rudyard's work on planetary nodes and really refined it. So just how the moon's nodes are in Vedic astrology what's called Rahu Ketu. The moon's nodes are simply the points where the moon's orbit conjoins the ecliptic to the north and to the south. And across all branches of astrology, the moon's nodes, the dragon's head or tail, Rahu Ketu, are some of the most important indicators in anyone's birth chart. In evolutionary astrology, we take this to an even deeper degree by understanding that every planet forms nodes to the ecliptic. So what we're looking at in this chart are the current planetary nodes. Now, planetary nodes of especially the outer planets move very, very slowly. And interestingly enough, the transits of Pluto's nodes are roughly 2,000, 2,500 year periods. So Jeffrey Green was able to recognize and correlate together the significance of the astrological age, which again has to do with belief system, with the nodes of Pluto, which has to do with the human oversoul's collective evolution through any mass period of time. Now, what Satyam has so observantly noticed is that Capricorn is this beaten down, be-all, end-all archetype that we see very overemphasized, overinflated in our world. And we see that reflected through the south nodes of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter, all being in the signs of Capricorn for all souls on the planet in this day and age. This is a reflection of our current day and age. Now, Capricorn has to do with the building of society. So Capricorn has to do with man-made religion, man-made society, man-made rules and regulations. And that is specifically the past of human experience. Again, the south nodes of Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter for all souls on the planets in Capricorn says that for many past lives, our human collective has evolved in Capricorn. It has been a dog-eat-dog, fight-to-survive world. It has been an achievement, accomplishment-oriented world, and that's supposed to be the standard of success, and how much we accomplish, or the inheritance, or how big of a statue we leave over our gravestone is supposed to be a measure of our success. So that is distorted Capricorn. Distorted Capricorn over forcefulness. Man-made rules, regulations, and religion. Now, that information is not separate from the age of Pisces that we're in. So we're in this high Capricorn period in a Pisces age, and when we put the two together, might it be possible that we've formed religions that in their essence have everything to do with unconditional love and sacrifice and surrender, but then built up huge Capricorn infrastructures, aka the church. You see, Neptune Pisces is the essence. Capricorn Saturn is the structure that contains it. And every single spiritual revolutionary leader doesn't come to this planet to form a religion. A religion forms around them as a byproduct. The religion is a structure to attempt to preserve that essence, but nearly as soon as the church is formed, it becomes distorted immediately. As soon as that structure is formed, it begins to lose that essence immediately. So as it has gone in the Pisces age, where at first, 2,000 years ago, Christ is the revolutionary. Then the first early Christians are being fed to lions in the Colosseum. It's not until about 500 AD that it starts to get monocropped into a religion which was done forcibly. Everyone had to convert to Christianity. We can only imagine the mass hysteria that caused during that time. That mass hysteria is caricature of being on the cusp of age shifts.
And for the astrologers out there, you probably already know where I'm going with this, but for those of you who are new, I'll explain what I mean. When we look back at the last 2,000 years or so of human history, it seems to match more with Capricorn, because Capricorn is the sign of structure and stability that is gained through law and order. So it has to do with rules and regulations and government restrictions, national borders, and external authority figures. And I've even heard that Capricorn has to do with the rules and restrictions that are put on us, the limitations of natural law, like
yes.
linear
so Pluto,
time
South
and
Node, enters
gravity
Capricorn in the year
forces
600.
like, cause and effect, or the law of karma. So if that's Capricorn, then to me that more accurately reflects human history than does Pisces. Because if the last 2,000 years took place in the age of Pisces, then why did humans try to crucify every genuine spiritual mystic to walk the face of the earth, and then distort their teachings and try to channel them into some kind of organized religion?
So this is what Yukteswar was addressing in his highly pioneering work. His book is The Holy Science. And in The Holy Science, he provides this totally revolutionary, and I know is controversial idea, because in India, we of course understand different ages. There's the Sat Yuga, Tetra Yuga. We are now in the Kali Yuga. So now we have 3 mass cycles we just put together. The planetary nodes, where Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter's south node are in Capricorn, in a Pisces age, which has to do with belief system in a Kali Yuga, which means a dark age, which means those holding compassion, truth, unconditional love, just like Christ said, picked up their crosses and followed Christ through an experience of sacrifice. The individual leader, spiritual soul, pillar, witch, wise soul, being set aflame by the minions, the followers, just like what happened to Jesus himself. So Jesus being the avatar soul, introducing the Pisces age, which could be the entire forthcoming cycle through the whole zodiac too, by the way, is this sacrifice during the Kali Yuga, during this dark age where the whole species has fallen to a complete inversion, which means what? The people holding the truth get turned into villains, and villains get put at the top. This is why Christ said the last will be made first and the first will be made last. That quotation comes straight out of the day and age in which Christ spoke and taught. A Pisces age during a dark age with a huge patriarchal Capricorn underlaying. Now, this is an abusive prison world and society when we put all the above together. Is it therefore a punishment that spiritual souls are being sent here? No. Some of the most highly evolved spiritual souls through this dark age of Pisces have held the light while being strung up, crucified, burnt at the stake simultaneously. That is the extraordinary spiritual initiation into real Pisces that has been bestowed to particular souls throughout the last 2,000 years. Because you may have noticed not everyone's walking on water, not everyone is on the same level as Christ. We are all on a spiritual evolution. This is at the heart of what evolutionary astrology is all about.
Which seems like a very Capricorn thing to do. And in an age of Pisces, wouldn't genuine spirituality and mysticism have been valued? Things like meditation and the expansion of consciousness through psychedelics and lucid dreaming, and not to mention compassion and boundless.
So these are, again, stereotypes for Pisces, and you don't hear so many people talking about how common Pisces is in the chart of serial killers, for example. So Pisces also has to do with complete crises of belief, faith. Pisces can be the void of meaninglessness as much as it can be connection to pure inspiration itself. And in evolutionary astrology, we understand every house and zodiac sign is an evolutionary process. So Pisces is specifically where the soul meets that crises necessarily for evolutionary purpose.
Unconditional love, those are what I've heard Pisces is all about. And so where have those things been in the last?
Christ. We have a religious figure coming in at the dawn of the age of Pisces, literally delivering the Pisces age liturgy.
In the last 2,000 years. And as far
the
as
fact
the
that humans
goes,
haven't been able to keep up with it is a completely different issue. The fact that human beings aren't keeping up with it is a reflection of the human species. Again, being in a dark age, the majority of souls at this particular time are going to be completely lost, having no capability to even know what love or God or spirituality is. Most of us on a spiritual journey are realizing that we are confused about all the above as well. Hence, our spiritual evolution continues.
Or the new age that we might be shifting into, it doesn't really match perfectly with what I know about Aquarius either. Aside from the technological advancements, I thought Aquarius had to do with community and friendship and social harmony or togetherness.
Well, wouldn't that be nice? Aquarius has much to do with social harmony and integration as much as it has to do with total isolation. So here we're beginning to hear some of the biases that are very common for people beginning to learn about astrology, where, Pisces is spiritual and Scorpio's dark and scary. And these are just biases. These are projections. There's no good or bad. You get the full spectrum for every zodiac sign. Now, community and the interconnection of the species is specifically an Aquarian function. So we're getting a very clear indicator of entering the age of Aquarius through the technology of the internet. When before now has the species collectively ever been interconnected as a community before now? This is the very first time. Totally radical, totally game-changing. This is the entrance of the age of Aquarius.
And that's not really the change that I see happening in our world. To me, Scorpio more accurately reflects the spirit of our times, and I'll just explain that really briefly for anyone who doesn't know. Scorpio deals with all of the aspects of life that we've been taught never to talk about at parties. It's the sign of that which is taboo. So things like death and sexuality, money, power dynamics, political views, and conspiracy theories, food choices even, and things that are even as uncomfortable for us to think about as black magic or Satanism, devil worship, things like that are associated.
Now, if we could imagine speaking to someone who's got like 6 planets in Scorpio, how they're going to feel about themselves, right? So that's a very limited and very biased understanding of Scorpio, which is why you also may have the total misunderstanding of believing that our current day and age reflects a high degree of Scorpio energy, which it does not. The last age of Scorpio would be about 20,000 years ago, as was experienced by humans on this planet. Scorpio is probably one of the most misunderstood signs, as is Pisces. So again, all of these assumptions and misnomers is quite common. with these particular zodiac signs. But to give my personal opinion, not having any idea what the age of Scorpio was like, I would suspect that some 20,000 years ago, and human beings were around in the Scorpio age, Scorpio has so much to do with the unconscious and the understanding of life as a symbol system. And the understanding of all of life is to generate evolution through life and death. So the actual function of Scorpio is to take us beyond limitation, which is why it gets associated with taboos. Taboos seeks to break down those limitations, egoic limitations, fears. Scorpio is where we face fears. Hence, it can become associated with dark magic and, Satanism and all of that. But, to speak to it more broadly, Scorpio is where we get experiences that really break us down. At its worst, Scorpio is where powers outside of our control get thrust onto us. And then we learn to discern what is ours from theirs in highly claustrophobic, high intense experiences and environments. That hot kettle, the hell realm, is the intensity of Scorpio. Now, my guess is that in the Scorpio age, humans did not yet invent language. And so Scorpio also has to do with magnetism, or souls speaking through symbols or completely unconsciously. So our entire species consciousness in a Scorpio age, I don't think we could even possibly fathom in this day and age. But my speculation is a day and age in which we communed with nature and one another almost completely non-verbally. There is also a huge emphasis on sexuality. Obviously, we're very far from that right now. And I believe part of why you may have assumed these distortions around Scorpio is Scorpio's actually been suppressed. Scorpio's been shoved under, distorted. That began about halfway into the Pisces age, because halfway into every age, the sign opposite to that age, so Virgo's the sign opposite to Pisces, starts to form distortions. So around 500, 600 AD into 1000 AD, Christianity's already monocropped the religion, and we start to see these perverted beliefs around this idea such as original sin. There's something wrong with us, we've got to break ourselves to get back to heaven. And there were a group, for example, that existed during this time called the flagellants. Self-flagellants. They used to flagellate themselves out of their own unconditional sin by causing themselves serious suffering, bodily injury. Now that is a masochistic pathology that formed out of the confusion of what Pisces is supposed to be, the confusion of original sin, or the confusion of how to live as a healthy spiritual being. So we're actually, the Virgo distortions that formed during the Age of Pisces is when we had the mythos of the Garden of Eden, and Adam and Eve see themselves as naked. And there's this perversion that becomes associated with nakedness, the body, sexuality. In fact, since the age of Taurus, if we read the Bible, those Egyptians, nasty people, those Babylonians, nasty people, prostitutes, sorcerers, astrologers, all those nasty things. Well, those were coming out of the fresh age of Aries. The age of Taurus had become distorted, was falling apart. That was the falling of Venus, the falling of Lucifer. How art thou fallen, O Lucifer? From the Bible is a reference to the falling of Babylon, the ending of the age of Taurus. Now, if we were to use that as a comparison to where we find ourselves now in time, it actually all checks out, Satyam, because at the end of the age of Pisces, we're experiencing Pisces age distortions. Confusion around faith, confusion around unconditional love, confusion around surrender. Some of the most spiritually evolved souls laying themselves low, getting taken advantage of, not taking care of their bodies, not taking care of their health. This is confusion as opposed to authentic spirituality. So whatever age we're evolving through, we don't have that served to us on a silver platter. That's where we're particularly meeting confusion and experiences that we have to live in order to learn, grow, and evolve. That is the foundation of evolutionary astrology. We understand our life is not just a karmic pendulum of good karma, bad karma. It's also a lot of what we experience for evolutionary necessity. We have to go through certain experiences or certain rites of passage to learn, grow, and evolve into our potential. And that potential exists even during a Pisces age in a Kali Yuga, while the planetary south nodes of Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto is in Capricorn, which for anyone who is halfway awake and aware is a dark age here on planet Earth. This has been a prison society. This has been a near inversion of what the truth is supposed to be, which is why, again, Christ said, the first will be made last, and the last will be made first. What he's speaking to is the future golden age. We can suspect only some tens of thousands of years from now, hopefully, if our species makes it to that time, which who knows? Our collective decisions may have a lot to do with our species' future evolution. But I do believe that is what he's speaking to, is the actual age shift between Kali Yuga and then shifting between the golden age. Now, what Yukteswar shared in the Holy Science is that we don't go from Kali Yuga back to Sat Yuga like there's this reset. What he said is there's this movement towards Kali Yuga, and then we go back to Satya Yuga in much more of a reverberation. And what he said is that we tap down at the bottom of the Kali Yuga around 500 AD, which means we're actually now on the upswing back towards a golden age. But I would say if we were to really interpret that overall bird's eye view perspective, that would mean for those who are on the front lines of spiritual evolution or collective evolution, we're having to purge out our past life traumas, which occurred during the authentic medieval dark age. So this is the actual work that I do with my clients, is I can look at a soul, understand their past lifetimes, understand how their early childhoods are repeating their past lifetimes so they can begin where they last left off for the purpose of their soul's evolution. There's many, many hidden blessings that becomes revealed throughout the spiritual journey. What we don't have can turn into what we can provide for so many others. Where we're particularly challenged at first is where we can become particular, refined, or masterful. With that being said, I would encourage us all to embrace the reality of the day and age in which we live. A really common thing to do at the end of a Pisces age would be to try to deceive ourselves, try to skip and jump into a golden age. Everything's sparkly, everything's perfect, everything's all finished. And what Satyam's calling attention to in this video is that's not what we're seeing reflected back from the world. This is the astrology that's checking out as to why we're seeing and experiencing what we are seeing and experiencing.
Are associated with Scorpio, and that's what I see coming to the forefront of people's mind on like a collective level. And so my question is, does that indicate that we're moving into the age of Scorpio and out of the age of Capricorn? And if so, how's that possible? And should we be preparing ourselves for another 2,000 years of very sticky, messy, divisive, intimate conversations? And I hope so.
Again, I think we're actually considerably far away from Scorpio, and real embodied Scorpio would be a complete mastery of life after death. Do we see people knowing how to comprehend death here on this planet? Do we see people all mature in funeral times and all of this? No, I mean, we are really Scorpio depleted as a species at this particular point in time. The ruler of Scorpio, Pluto, was only discovered a century ago. There's only been 1/2 Pluto orbit since Pluto's discovery. I think that's another reflection of how little we know about the unconscious. That word was only coined about a century ago by Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. So evolutionary astrology is a very Scorpio-centric branch of astrology. We know Pluto to be the majority of the iceberg beneath the water. The total unconscious is to understand what drives us. And honestly, we are all motivated by ulterior motivation until we face our fears, until we face the unknown, until we dive beneath the surface and discover and map out our soul's unconscious. All of this is some of the usefulness and medicine that can be gained from a proper education in evolutionary astrology as taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green. Again, the grandfather is Dane Rudyard. I highly, highly suggest you check out their work. For anyone who's interested in learning more of the zodiac, I will recommend the book New Mansions for New Men. Maybe a bit of an outdated title, but still one of the best books that goes really, really deep into these archetypes. If we think of the 12 zodiac signs as the totality of all natural life experience, these zodiac signs are going to be tremendously, tremendously rich and deep. So astrology, no doubt, is a lifetime of study. And again, Satyam, I so appreciate you sharing and asking these questions. It's been a real pleasure answering them. I hope that you all gained something here useful as well. And if any of you have similar questions about EA, your life, spirituality, what the heck's going on in this day and age, etc., check out my Q&A. I will have more information coming out in the coming weeks. You'll be able to sign up either here on YouTube or through my community at rasalilacommunity.com. Check out that webpage. You can also join my astrology school. There I teach EA as was taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green. Thanks again. Wishing you all a lovely day.